hop in. Let's get into it. Let's peel back the layers. So first and foremost, thank you so much for taking a minute out for the show today. I appreciate it.
No problem.
So let's begin before we get into your book and your journey by asking you this. One of the flashpoints of all of our lives was 5 years ago with this pandemic. How we made it
Yes.
through, how much change we went through. How did you get through that era, and how has it influenced the way that you do things today?
Well, that's so funny that you said that because it was right when that pandemic came. I was in the middle of my writing project, but that because I was writing in a closed down environment, it made me miss my contacts and my community. My community in Miami is small. It's all the legal field. It's our clients. It's a small operation, entrepreneurial. I miss so much that feeling of community during the pandemic, and writing about it was what got me through the
Wow.
pandemic. And after doing that, I realized that community is what is going to save us in this future of Zoom meetings and where people don't have contact with regular people every day. I really believe we need to go back to that. Communities. I raised my community, my daughter in a community where I had no family. My young husband and I moved there. I did what everyone did before Zoom. I chose a place where I could earn a living. I moved there with a young husband and a baby. And that's what I did. And the funniest thing is now everyone in the world wants to do what I did in 1995 and come to Palm Beach and all that. But I
Yeah.
believe now with the choice that remote work has given people, it is such a beautiful thing that people can choose whether they want to live in the mountains or the desert or near the water. But that being said, the community outreach is even more important.
Yeah, speaking of going 95, even if you went back to 85, if the pandemic would have happened in the 80s, there was no way we would have been as connected as we were. And that was the irony of this time. We had any means of being connected and seeing each other, but we still needed to be in the same room. It's like music. Like it's fine they had live streams, it's fine that you could hear it, but if you're not in that room intermingling with energies and vibes, it's not a human experience.
We need to have the human experience. Even because of the hip hop clients, we've been able to be on in the studio with them, watch them shooting the videos. And that's such a private world. But if anyone can have that experience, and I write about it in my one of my last chapters, which is called Hip Hoppin' and Rockin'. Um, it is such an amazing opportunity to view that from the in, to be there, to be there.
Yeah, for sure. So let's peel back the layers of you. I want to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds at career day, and one of the kids wants to know what you do for a living. How do you explain what you do?
I'm serial entrepreneur. I do anything that piques my curiosity, that makes me want to learn and gives me the reason to get up in the morning. I never did anything for money.
So let me ask you this. When you were that age, when you were 12 years old, you were young, you were at career day, what was your dream job? What did you want to be when you grew up?
You know what? I didn't have a dream job. I just knew that coming from a single mom family where she said she raised us on the money from her father died not young, but had her late. She was an only child. I just knew somebody in the family, I was the oldest of four girls, was going to have to somehow. So I was super ambitious. I wanted to make money, but I didn't choose a path based on money. I was a mass media major, some similar to you, but I just took jobs that found interesting to me, and each one paved the way for the next one. And the main thing is I was curious. I observed. I asked questions. And I think it's coming back to how it was in the 80s when I started working, the late 80s. If you wanted to work hard and you had those traits, you were wanted. You were able, that was the age of Wall Street and Charlie Sheen. And
Yeah.
I was living in New York City then. If you were passionate and hungry and willing to work hard, people would give you the chance.
So when you were young, very young, What examples, what seeds were sown in you to have this entrepreneurial spirit, to work hard, to capitalize on all the experiences and curiosity you had?
That's a
What?
funny thing. I had no one around me that was working. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, even though she was a widow. Both my grandmothers, one had been a teacher, one had been, the wife of a perfume entrepreneur. I had no role models. It was just something ingrained in me that I just wanted more. I just wanted, I don't know. I just had that. I was the only one of my four sisters that had that. They
Yeah.
say it's often the oldest granddaughter, the oldest daughter, and I fit. Actually, it was probably my dad, because my dad, up until I had him, he was super successful. He was an engineer and he was working hard in the perfume business at night in the basement of our home. That was in New Jersey. And I was like, I thought that was all so exciting, to see a man doing a day job and then still carrying on his wife's family business, and him being I was his little buddy. I was a tomboy type, and him telling me I have no sons, so my legacy lives on in my daughters. So that
So,
was probably the motivation.
yeah, for sure. So, would you consider him your hero? Who's been this?
Yes, my dad was my hero. My
Yeah.
dad was my hero. Absolutely, 100%.
So give me kind of an overview of your career arc up to today. How did all of the entrepreneurial dreams become that first gig? How did you evolve to where you're at today?
Um, Interesting enough, because there was no LinkedIn, there was no computers when I started. It was all, I got one opportunity. It was at Elizabeth Arden Cosmetics, and I was in the PR department and I was writing ad copy. And I somehow created these amazing ads that went beyond the day of beauty, the half day of beauty, that they were offering. And I thought of these, let's let women come in and get a blow dry and a makeup for a night on the town. And that became the PM pick me up, which now today everybody does that whenever they. So then we advertised it in the papers in New York, and it caught on. And the CEO of the company was an Israeli entrepreneur, and he just caught on that I was ambitious, and I went to work for his holding company, which consisted, he had bought Elizabeth Arden to merge with Fabergé to he was in private equity, to streamline the operations of two big cosmetic companies. And on the day he sealed that deal, I was with him, and we went to the men's clothing store on Fifth Avenue called Bijan. And I met the owner, happened to be there, and my boss bought a whole bunch of clothes. And somehow that seemed more exciting to me, even though I never studied fashion. And my boss's empire fell apart in the late 80s, nothing to do with me, obviously, with, junk bonds and all that. And I called up that company thinking that a friend of mine in LA needed a job at Bijan. And when she went to me, I was trying to do a good deed for a friend who was younger, who was just starting the workforce. I thought she'd be perfect for the company. On the final interview with Mr. Bijan, the designer, he goes, "How did you get here?" And she said, "Well, my friend Karen in New York sent me." He goes, "Well, what does this Karen do?" And when he heard I worked for this Israeli entrepreneur who also had a presence in LA, he goes, "What's that Karen doing now?" And she goes, "I don't know, because her boss's company," goes, "send her to the headquarters in New York. My showroom manager just left." And that was the start of it. I was
Wow.
trying to help someone else. I went in there. That was a better dream job than the one I had before that. And
Wow.
then that's what led me to, so I ended up selling, menswear under his reign. He taught me everything, how to manufacture the product, how to market it. It was better than a degree from Harvard Business School to work with a man who founded a menswear company. And at that time, he created a perfume line. And because my family had a background in perfume, that was just perfect for him, because I understood how important the bottling was and the packaging and everything like that. So we did perfume launches at Bergdorf Goodman and Saks Fifth Avenue. And he gave me such a sense of responsibility. He just kept giving me things, challenges, and I just rose to the occasion. And that's how you learn about business.
So let's segue over to the literature part before we get into Once Upon a
Okay.
Time at Palm Beach. When you were growing up, what was the seminal
I was
book, the
always
author?
reading. I was
Yeah.
always in the corner reading Nancy Drew mysteries, everything. I loved reading. Reading was my escape to deal with after my father's death. I loved stories. I was just always reading. And when you read, you want to write. I don't know how to explain it. It's like you're just focused on that. I always loved writing. In my day, if you had told your mom of immigrant parents you wanted to be a writer, they would say that was the same as saying you wanted to be an actress or an actress. It just, they wanted the American dream. They wanted you to progress. They wanted you to move up the economic ladder somehow. So I
So
didn't never thought of pursuing that as a career.
yeah. So when did you move down to Florida? When did this
1995.
Okay, it was in 95. So for those out there that aren't familiar with the book, give them an abstract, an overview, and even more than that, what ultimately urged you to begin writing this book?
What urged me to write this book, is I wrote it from journals I kept my whole life, is that I came from a lot of tragedy, a lot of trauma. Um, but somehow I made it. And I always felt that what was happening to me was so exciting. I always felt like I was some character. How could this be happening to me, a simple girl? And I journaled about it. And what finally made, I always wanted to write a book about it since I was 30. And finally, at 55 or whatever, I had reached a plateau at the law firm where the revenues were coming in. We had 10 times the revenue than when I started doing that. And I just, whenever the money becomes too easy, I feel like I need the next challenge. So it was just the next challenge that I felt the time in my life that I had the flexibility financially and emotionally to finally do what I'd wanted to do since I was 30, 25 years later.
So when you finally had the book in your hands, you got the box of books, the first read, what was that like to actually see it come
Oh
to
my
life?
God, it's the most unbelievable experience. And the other reason why I wrote this is I think every family needs somebody in their family to write their family's journey. My mom and my husband's parents were so intent on the American dream, they never talked to us about our family heritage and how it happened. And I find those stories fascinating. And I think every family needs to know, what that people before them did to make their journey possible. I think that's hugely important.
It's interesting. I wonder if that's a part of the immigrant experience. My dad, his grandparents, great grandparents, or it would have been his grandmother and grandfather. They came to Ellis Island from Italy, and I didn't know anything about my real family history until I wrote a paper in college as a communications major. And then I started figuring things out. And then I really learned about it. My dad passed away in '08, and he got spooked about 6 years prior and left his entire life story on audio cassettes and didn't tell anybody. So I just went into a drawer and popped it in and was like, huh, what's this? And there was the story, and there was all of these things.
Isn't it
But
fascinating?
it's wild. It's like how do we not know that? And I think about that in general with people when they get to that funeral time and they're like, what's the story? And people don't know what the story is. They can't orchestrate and put it together.
Right. Everybody needs to know that. In order to know where you're going, you need to know where you came from.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hugely believe that. And that was one of my purposes of writing the book, too, to hope that I can inspire other people to do the same thing. I was fortunate that I found my writing time, I found 5 hours a day. Um, but anybody can do it. You don't need to carve out that 5 hours. I'm sure people could do it if they were holding a full time job.
So you've obviously been very successful throughout your life as an entrepreneur and now as an author. And I'm
I
curious.
don't know if I'm successful as an author, but that's not why I wrote the book.
Well, but I think you're going to be. I think it's going to be another part of what you've already done in your life. It
I
just
think so too. And that's why I did it, but that wasn't why I did it.
No, I get it. I get it. But this is my question to you. What is the motivation when that alarm clock goes off to consistently do this year after year, decade after decade, to push
It's
yourself?
purpose. It's being purpose driven. It's just getting up and feeling you have a purpose. I believe that's what keeps people, that to me happiness is purpose. I have to have purpose, and I have to say I'm a little disillusioned now with, people that just want to post things or frivolous things about, I don't know. I get up every day, how to make the world a better place, how to be a better person than I was the day before, and that's what motivates me.
So if you had a dream tonight and ran into the 18-year-old version of you and you had a book in your hands, like a big coffee table book, and you handed it over and said, "This is how your life has turned out so far," would that young version of you believe it?
No, not a chance.
Would you give
Not
that?
a chance.
Would you give any advice?
What I would give advice to my 18-year-old self is I was always trying to plan and orchestrate everything. And as long as you can see, as long as you can find a window, if a door is closed, you don't have to have all those plans. My advice to is let it unfold. Let it unfold. If you're doing something you're passionate about, let it unfold. Be motivated, be purposeful. It will happen for you. You can't give up.
So you had mentioned writing 5 hours a day, and you kind of talked a little bit about the writing process. Of all of the documentaries that exist in the world, there's always this behind the scenes kind of a thing, but you don't really ever see writers behind the scenes, how they create their masterpieces. If you could be in the room of one writer and watch how they would construct their masterpiece, who would you love to have watched do that?
Well, probably because I'm a fashionista, probably Coco Chanel.
Okay.
I would love to see how she crafted her empire.
So let's say you walked into a room of everybody that's known you as an entrepreneur and a businesswoman throughout all these years, and you walk to a podium and you could tell them one fun story about your life. Maybe the first concert you went to, maybe jumping out of an airplane, just maybe some summit you climbed to the top of, something fun that would give them a different light on who you are as a human being. What would be a fun story you would tell that room?
Well, I would probably tell that room, which is one of the best things that ever happened to me. I was on cloud nine, is when I got to meet Little Wayne because he was my inspiration. I'm driving around Palm Beach in a white Mercedes in a place that's all white. And there was no inspiration of working women. That's what my story's about. I was the only one on that island. Everybody else was dropping their kids off, going to the tennis club, which is fine, doing charity work, but I was there to participate as a woman, a New York City woman in the fashion industry. And those words of they hip hop talks about the hustle culture, about the grind. And that's what I was doing as a mom, as a homeowner, as a wife, as a running a business. And when I got to meet him finally, through the owner of Cash Money Records, because my husband told the owner, my wife's dream is to meet Little Wayne because he's a wordsmith and I work with words, not because he's Little Wayne. I don't care about famous people, but when I got to see him on the set of a video shoot and got to talk to him after, and it happened to be my birthday, that all happened on my birthday out of complete coincidence. Birdman called up my husband. He said, "What are you doing in the end of August when everybody else would have been on a Venetian island somewhere? Of course, we're in Miami working. We have a shoot tonight. Your wife can meet Little Wayne." And after that experience of talking to him and telling him he had thought about retiring at that point, that was in 2017. And I was telling him, "You can't retire. You inspired my words." And he hugged me. I was like floating on cloud nine.
That's awesome. So, of all of these adventures you've had, of everything you've accomplished, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
I am ultimately the proudest of my daughter and my three stepchildren because I worked so hard to let them all follow their own path of what they wanted to do. They had a lot of bumps in the road, a lot of turning off on a dead end, but the four of them, with a lot of support from me and their dads, they're all pursuing careers they are passionate about, and they are able, for millennials, and they're able to earn a living and they wake up with the same passion and purpose every day. So that honestly is what I'm the most proud of.
So, Karen, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, everyone you work with, everyone that knows you, everyone that gets your book, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I'm a kind of person that wants to help others get ahead. People, I honestly don't know what people, some people think of me that it's too good to be true. Like, how is she doing? Like, I literally, anyone who crosses my path, that's why on my website, Sunshine and Money, I told the publisher to put a form that anyone who contact Karen, ask me a question and I will help you.
So,
I because that's my living breathing thing. Anyone will say she always saw the best in everybody. I don't gossip, I don't criticize, I always find some redeeming quality about anyone.
so let me ask you this: as someone that loves fashion, if you could go back to any era of whether it's America, it could even be Europe, the world, to any fashion time and hang out and be a part of it and dress like that every day, and it would be the regular like way that everybody dressed, what era would you go back to?
I love that era of, like, in America, of like the Gilded Age era of like when the men wore hats and the women, everything was more formal. I would have loved to been in that age. I think that seems so, maybe it's just romanticized, but I think that seems super glamorous.
See, I'm thinking that too. Like I think about Kansas City, like when I see old pictures of
Yes.
downtown, like that whole like Tom Pendergast Prohibition era, because we were the only
Yes.
city that had booze flowing. We had jazz going,
Yes.
and it was like everybody was dapper, everybody was happy, and you see that
Yes.
every once in a while. Like whenever I go down to 18 and Vine, there's people dressed in the nines, and it's yeah,
I
and
love
it's
that.
awesome.
I love the formality of that. I love the civility. Palm Beach was like that when I came because it had so many of the old moneyed families. And that's just what I loved about it. It was like my daughter went to cotillion classes and I got to see those people. And obviously they were my clients, but they got to tell me how their families, did that. Marjorie Merriweather Post. And it was just so exciting. I
Yeah,
love that. I love
yeah.
those times.
So if anybody wants to pick up a copy of the new book, or if they want to reach out, Once Upon a
Okay,
Time
if
in
they
Palm
want to
Beach.
reach out, it's Karen Soven, sunshineandmoney.com. That's a play on my subtitle, which is Tales of Life and Living from this tales from the land of sunshine and money. Once Upon a Time in Palm Beach is on Amazon. Right now, they did a 99 cent for like 1 week introductory ebook rate or a hardcover if they always just want to have it with them. And audiobook will be out in February.
Okay, excellent. I will put all these links in the show notes.
Yeah,
So,
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, Apple Books, all those things.
okay, excellent. I will get
But
those
tell
links.
them if they have questions, on my website, there's a form,
Okay.
Sunshine and Money, they can contact me. And I will be glad, no matter how busy I am in my day, no matter how busy I was ever, even when I was working the 9 to 5, I would always take the time to help people with
Yeah,
their journey, not with, don't ask me to come and, clean out your refrigerator. I
right.
want to help people with upward mobility.
Absolutely. Totally get it. Well, I will make sure to put those in the show notes. Karen, this has been an absolute joy. Thank you so much for taking a minute out. Best of luck with the book and have a wonderful 2026.
Thank you. You too, Joe. It was a
Cool.
pleasure.
Great. So, the I will have this out pretty quick. I work on these pretty fast, so I will have links over tomorrow for the interview.
I really appreciate it because I really think, because I wrote it as a reverse prince and princess story, which I didn't know I was going to do. That just
Yeah,
came to me
sure.
as I was writing. I think that it's a clever device, but it's cute because the time I was writing it was when Disney put out all those princess movies, and I have a girl, an only girl, so we were living that life. And I think it's cute to read a true story that brings folklore and fairy tales
Yeah, those
into it.
organic ones are the best. Oh, yeah, I totally get it for sure. Well, thank you. Send my love to Miami, and hopefully you get up to Kansas City someday.
I will, and I'm going to call you.
Yeah, do it. Absolutely. Great to
I
meet you,
want to go
Karen.
to that place.
Oh, yeah, no,
Okay, bye bye.
absolutely. Yeah.